How's it, internet?
How's it, Roddy? It always
Yeah,
sounds like I'm
lekker.
on a radio show with you.
I try to inject a little bit of energy, I suppose you'd call it.
Charisma. Sounds like some very cool 50s or 60s radio show. It's a
I
pity
think
though.
so.
We must really go and log it on User Voice. I want to see more videos on Teams live events. That'll be cool because of course we drew strings or like short sticks and said, well, if not me or you can be on both, then none of us is on, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Wow.
we do this together. We're learning together.
We are learning together. It's all focused on the cool stuff, the cool stuff. Rodster, you've got some cool things planned for us today, and I'm still learning like crazy. Good grief, I'm learning like crazy, and I hope everyone else that's watching this crazy show of ours. It's me in the seats watching what Rod does, and just I'm here to heckle him. Actually, I just give him a lot of grief about things. But shoot, what are we doing today, Rods?
Cool. So we're going to, carrying on from last time, we're going to do a little bit more branding, and then we're going to talk a bit about some communication that we can do in our app, right? Make things a little bit more usable and clear to our users.
Can we do a very quick, very quick recap just on what we covered last time? Maybe for someone that joins us the first time or watches a video for the first time.
Sure, that's a very good point. So what we're doing through the course of the series is we're making an incident management app. That is the case study we've chosen to do. Our first couple ones, we built one out of the box using the from SharePoint template that just does a bunch of the work for us. And we did a bit of customization to that one. And then in the last few, we've been creating one from scratch. So we started with an entirely blank canvas, and we're moving through developing that into a fuller app. So we've got a gallery we've put in with our various incidents so far. And we had to display that and how to put in the various information and what information we want to show. And then last time we did some more filtering, and we put in some search functionality and some ordering functionality so that in the app as we have it at the moment, it's not terribly important, right? Because we can see everything together in one screen, but if we had 50, 100 different things, that would be quite challenging. So we've put in some search and some filters and some ordering to make it easier for users to find the tickets that they're looking for.
And of course, I mean, that could be very valuable. Let's say, for example, and I mean, this incident management can be applied to so many things, but let's say it's a ticket logging system for across different plants or locations, which means that a person can then also filter for a location or something. So I think the filters were very, I mean, I was apprehensive in the beginning. I'm the citizen developer that just builds from SharePoint because that's what I know. And I thought that this was going to be so much more work, but I think what you're showing me is that it's actually less work because you can kind of clean it up and do it right from the start. So I kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, that SharePoint template style of thing is great if you just need something quick and dirty. It will work, right? If you really want to do anything more than that, I think it's a lot less work to do it from scratch. Not only because you get more control over what's happening and you don't have a lot of the junk that it puts in there, you get to make all the decisions yourself. And then you have a better understanding of what your app's doing, because if you're building this app, remember, you have to support it yourself, generally. True. So you need to know what it's doing. Cool. So let's get into it, because we do have an hour, but that hour tends to fly by rather quickly when I'm on the call with you. So first up, we've got our little to-do list here. And the first thing we want to do is let's put in a logo for our app here. So I want to put a logo up in the top left for our company. So the way we need to do this is we're going to use an image control. And before we do that, we need to actually add our image. So if we go to our File tab, we can go down to Media down here. And this is where we can add our images and videos and audio and that sort of thing. We've talked previously about how if you've got videos, I don't think Power Apps is really the place for it. Even audio, I'm not sure why you'd use that, but those functionalities are available if you do want to. So I want to add an image here, and it's quite easy. We just go across to Browse, and we upload it. So here's the logo that I've prepared earlier, like a good cooking show host.
Oh, well done, you overachiever, you.
All right.
Did you get that logo from somewhere special, maybe, Rod?
Not this one, but the rest of the icons we're going to be using today. There is a great website, freeicons.io, and we'll have a slide on it later, which is a great resource if you're doing stuff like this. There is also, if you are looking for icons, there are out-of-the-box icons in the icon drop-down here that you can use. And for the majority of stuff you want to do, these are probably fine. And I'd have a look at those first. They are generally well accepted icons, which is a thing you want to bear in mind. When you're building your apps, you should always use images and graphics and icons that people are used to, right? People know what a menu looks like. People know what a save icon looks like. They might not know what a floppy disk looks like, but they know what a save icon looks like. So you can use those, and that is always the best thing to do.
You know, the young people think that the save icon, well, that a floppy disk or a stiffy disk is actually just a 3D printed save button, right?
Yep, I do.
That's very cute. Oh, I feel so old.
Anyway, on the media drop down on the insert tab here, we're going to put in an image. And the main attribute we're worried about here is the image attribute on an image control. And actually, I'm going to rename this here, and I'm going to rename this to logo. That's already being used, apparently. We'll call it image logo. And then I'm going to change that to the name of our logo, which is called logo, which is why it complained to me about the name there, because that name's already being used in the app. And I can just resize this a little bit. One nice little tip here is if you are resizing something like this, you can just click and drag it. You can also, if you want to specifically set the size, you can set it over here. So actually, let's maybe just change it to 50 and 50. Nice and round. And we'll move it into the corner there. So there we go. Yeah, we've got our nice little logo for our app. And then that logo image that we've uploaded, we can use multiple places throughout the app.
Yeah. On that, Rod, just a suggestion I want to make, and that's purely because I've had to support intranets for a big part of my IT career and environments is, so what would your suggestion be? So let's say we've got 10 cool new citizen developers developing Power Apps in a company. Is there a way that you can have like a single resource for assets where they can pull these things from? I know that you said that in some other point, you're going to also show us how there's like templates that you can do, but just from images, is there, or do you think the best is just to have a SharePoint library somewhere where everyone knows they go and fetch the icon to use? What is your suggestion on that?
So currently you'll have to upload it to the app. Unfortunately, you can't like pull it externally. There are ways you can do that. It's quite complicated. There are components you can build that will do that. That's also quite complicated. If you're in a position where you are sort of overseeing the Power Apps competency in your company, what you want to do is set up a component for stuff like your logo, probably even just the whole top banner, menus, things like that.
Okay.
So components, which we're going to get to way down the line, because they're so basically they're groups of controls, right? You build them just like you'd build an app, right? So you can make a new component, and you get a thing like this, and you can build it there, and then that can be exported and used in multiple different apps.
Got it.
And because it's stored externally, whatever changes you make to that will then filter through to all of the different apps. So if your company has a Power Platform competency, talk to them about doing that, even if it's components just for stuff like logos and header images.
But those are definitely, like I said, that's very good for people to consider straight from the start. Don't start using these things without considering the guidelines and rules in the background, because it makes it easier for the citizen developers and the new, like, amazing crowd we have building apps these days. Just put some rules and guidelines in place, even if it's just a SharePoint page that's built somewhere that just gives some guidance as to where you can get the, even if you're not at the component level yet, just give some guidance, because it just makes people's lives easier, and it makes your job easier. If you know exactly what color to use, exactly what logo to use, you don't waste so much time on it.
Absolutely. And most of the time, the business has that information already, right? They have
you must be joking, Rod. You must
most
be joking.
Most places have a CI document where they say, here's what our logo looks like. Okay, well, they should, right?
They should. You're right, they should, but they don't always. It's a struggle. Okay.
So the next thing I want to do here on the topic of communication, what I want to do is I want to provide logos for our type column here in our gallery, right? We've got a bunch of different types. We've got safety, quality control, injury, a bunch of different stuff. And I think it would be quite cool to have little logos next to them so people can easily identify what that is. You could do the same thing for status with like a little rag image. You could do the same thing for severity, anything like that, right? But we want to have one image that's variable depending on the information in the gallery. And there's lots of different applications to that. And we'll also get to learn a cool new function in amongst that. So we're going to have it here under type. I'm just going to move this one across a little bit, and we're going to put them right here. Before I do that, I need to actually upload our images. So I'm going to go back to the media here, and I'm going to browse again, and I've got a bunch of different images here that we can use. I'm going to open those up, and it will then upload it into the app.
Such a smarty pants.
Another quite cool thing while this is uploading, you can see here, it is showing us both the size of the image that we've put in place, and it's also showing you how many places it's used, right? And it's quite a good idea to go through your app periodically and just check up on this. Because
what do you mean with places used?
So our logo here, for instance, is saying places used in one place. So in our app, we've used it on one screen in one place up here. Whereas all
so
of
that
the other
refers to the app. It doesn't refer to it across the tenant, or so it refers to the specific app.
Just specifically in your app, and the rest of these are in 0 places because we haven't added them in yet.
Got it.
And if you're anything like me, you iterate a bunch on these sorts of apps, especially in the realm of iconography and look and feel. I'm not very good at it, so I end up having to redo it a bunch. And I end up with a whole lot of images in my app that aren't used at the end of the day, right?
So if you go and delete it, if you delete it off the page or the view again, then it shows back to 0 again. So that gives you a good indication of whether it's been used. Okay, got it. It's a good cleanup exercise then.
Yeah, you can just run through.
It adds weight to your form, right? I mean, all those gallery images in the background, even if they're not used.
Yeah. So the first time you open the app, right, it's going to download the app to you, and then it'll cache it. and it'll check for updates and whatever, but that first load is going to be larger the more images you have. So just be aware of that. Okay, now that I have those images in my gallery incidents, I've got the first item selected here, and I want to add my image in here. So I'll do it the same way we did our logo. I just go to media and I say add an image, and it's going to shrink it down for me. And we'll position it somewhere around there. In fact, we probably want to make it a little bit smaller so it's not overlapping the bottom there. There we go.
Are you going to go and build some crazy formula again?
I am. We are going to build a crazy formula here. So the way that we've learned to do this already is we'd have a really complicated if statement, right? We'd have a nested if and a nested if and a nested if. So if it's safety, then this one. Otherwise, if it's quality control, then this one. Otherwise, if it's injury, then this one. Otherwise, right? And you can make this giant nested if. We're not going to do it that way. Because we're always looking at the same value, right? We're doing the same check. We're just checking on the type. Right, we're checking this item type, and so there is a function in Power Apps called switch, which is really handy. It is like a case statement if you are familiar with, I suppose, SQL. So we can say switch, and wow, I'm sorry, that was probably hell of a loud. Can you still hear me there? Hello? Cool. I think I am still live.
I was on mute, sorry. I can hear you, thanks, Rob.
Me knocking my microphone was so loud it put you on mute. So if we look at...
It's good to wake everyone up, it's all good.
If we look at what the formula is looking for, we say switch, and then it's looking for a switch value, which will be what value are we checking against? And then it's looking for the match value. So if the switch value matches whatever we put there, then it will give us that result. And we can do that multiple times. So in this instance, we're going to say this item, right? Because we're in a gallery. We're going to say this item dot type. It's not, yeah, this item dot incident type. So that's what we're checking against. And then our first one will be safety, right? So if it's safety, then what do we want to match it to? We want to match it to icon safety. You know, I'm a big fan of, and you see it's even telling me here the data type is an image, right? You know, I'm a big fan of our naming conventions and naming things nicely. Before you upload your images to Power Apps, it's worth renaming them to something useful. Like here, this is our safety icon, because it just makes it easier to find out what we're looking for. Okay, otherwise, so we get two options here. We can have a default result if we want, or we can add in additional value matches. So I'm going to do that instead, and I'm going to say quality control. And you see it's already changed that for me. So it's realized that I've got another value match. So now what's the match result there? And I'll say icon quality. And we'll do the last one, which was injury. We do have more in the in the data source, but we don't have items for it yet. I'll go in afterwards and fill that all in for us, but just so we can see what this looks like. And that's our injury icon. And if we close that off there, and there we go. So that is a much simpler way to do this than nesting 1,000 if statements. We just do switch. What is the switch on? So what are we checking against? And then the various values and our results. This doesn't just have to be done with icons, obviously. You could do this with basically anything. You could also do this on buttons if you want to change what a button does based on some variable. You can do it like that too. So the switch is a very useful formula if you want to do different things depending on a variable. In this case, our variable is type. And I think that's quite a useful thing to do in things like galleries, because you can then very visually show people information, and it lets them much more easily at a glance see what information it is that they're seeing there. Similarly, on our status, we could use the same thing to do a RAG status, or on the severity, where you could have, if it's low, make the color green. And then instead of the image property, we do that on the fill, if that makes sense.
So just a note I want to add for people, because remember, even though we've built this from the Power App side as a blank canvas, right, that data is still possibly a drop-down list in SharePoint, right? So I think people must just realize that if they do this type of customizations, that they need to be clear that if people add choices in SharePoint, that the person that maintains the app is aware of that, because you might have to adjust those type of iconography maybe.
Absolutely, yeah. That sort of thing is important. The way we've done it for this app is everything on our SharePoint side is a single line of text.
Oh, that's
so that
right.
We can control everything in the app. And if you are building the app in that sort of purpose, that's a nice side effect as well. If you keep everything in the app, then if somebody wants to add a new type, they have to ask you to do it. So they have to let you know that they're adding a new type.
Yeah, you can build a little, like a request flow for it or something, so that the...
Absolutely.
Yeah, good idea.
Absolutely. So that switch function is really, really handy. Okay, so that's quite just a cool little thing there. Next, let's do our little footer here, right? We want some footer information that we can display on each page, potentially, to just give some information to everybody. At the moment, the text here is just text, right? We can type it in, and we could do that. We could just type it in there. But if we are going to be reusing it on every page, like I suspect we want to reuse that. So in our app start again, I'm going to set a variable. So we've already created collections previously. This time we're going to set a variable because we don't need multiple values. We only need a single value. So I'm going to set, we'll call this var footer, and the value of this is going to be values expressed by this app do not reflect the values of the people presenting the webinar, just as a note. So then on the app here, we're now going to set this variable for us. We've got this var footer. And then in the text attribute for our little label we've got at the footer here, we're just going to reference var footer. You can see it's already showing us there. And then we've got that for us. And I probably just want to put that in the center. And let's change the full color, change it like that. And we'll change the text to white so it looks a bit better. Move that out the way. So now we have this footer, and we can add that to every single page in our app. And we will do that as we move forward. And then if we ever want to change it, we don't have to go to every page to change it. Like if I've made a spelling mistake, which is highly likely, I can instead just come here and change what our variable is. And as soon as we refresh that variable, it then changes that. So when you are building these apps, it is worth considering what is it that I'm going to be doing multiple times. And if we are referencing something multiple times, rather create a variable or a collection for it. Sounds good.
Sounds like saving time in the end.
It does. So maybe the last thing I want to do tonight is provide some help to the users, right? Some a little bit of governance, not really governance, giving them some help when they're creating these incidents or when they're looking at these incidents. We've got the severity listing here, medium, low, and high, but what does that actually mean, right? We could have that information in a giant document somewhere or on a SharePoint site. That information is probably available to the user, but when they're in the app, it's nice to give them information in the app so that they don't have to leave the experience they're in where they're doing work to go and look for information. So what I'd like to do is have a little button here that they can push that will then give them information on what the severity means. So in order to do that, first I need a new icon. So again, I'm just going to add a couple icons here. I've got a help icon and an information icon. So we'll just load those into the app quickly. And again, we'll insert in our picture. Here's our media and image. And I'm going to change that to our icon info. There we go. And we can scale it down. Move it in here. I've probably chosen a poor icon for this because it's quite bold and we probably want something a little less bold. But I think that works fine. Okay, so now we've got our little button here. And when somebody presses it, I want it to give us a pop-up dialog box where it'll pop up and give us our information and then go away. And I'll show you how to do that. And the way I like to do that, actually, let's just name these things a little bit. I'm being very bad now about my naming. So the way I like to do the pop-ups is to make one that's reusable, right? You can build them so that they're single use. So I could build one that's just for this information icon. I'd like to build one that I can reuse for multiple different pop-ups, because that way I don't have too many controls cluttering up. So if we'll see what I mean now. So this is a little complicated. So the first thing I need to do is I need to blank out the background so that people can't look at it. So I'm going to put in a label. And I'm going to rename this label to, I'm going to call all of them PU for pop-up. And I'm going to say pop-up background. I'm going to take out all the text on it. And I'm going to make it the same size as our whole canvas here. And I'm going to make it white. Actually, let's make it a nice dark gray. Right, so when it pops up, you can't see the things behind it. One interesting thing about the colors is it's an RGB A value. So we got red, green, blue, and then the A is the alpha. So that's the opacity. So if we put in, instead of 1, if we put 0.5, you can now see through it a little bit. But if people are opening the app, if the pop-up is up, they can't click through to the controls behind it, which is quite important. The next thing I want to do is I actually want to determine what is the information that is going to be in that pop-up. And as I said, I want to make it multi-use, and there are 2 uses I want to use. I want to use it for this information button for the severity, and I also want to use it for a help icon to let people know where they can go to ask for help. So I wanted to do 2 things at the same time. the way I'm going to do that is we're going to make another collection, right? So we've used collections before. So I'm going to make another collection here. This one is going to be a little bit more complicated. I'm going to call this call pop-ups. And previously we've used simple controls, simple data types, right, for our collections. These ones are just strings. What we're going to do now is we're going to make objects. And that looks like this. Or it should. Oh. Why don't you like this? Is it caught up and it doesn't like that? No. Does not like my icons here. I do not know why. Icon underscore info. It really doesn't like that. Okay, well, we shall have to skip over that this evening, and I will figure out why it doesn't like that, and we will get back to that.
Just tell me, what did we try and achieve there?
Okay, so you can, what I'm doing here, let's walk through it bit by bit, right? So I am creating a collection, right, called call pop-ups, and this collection is going to be an object. So it's got the same way as all our different controls are objects. It's got different, it's actually basically just a table, right? Let's actually run this and we'll see what that looks like. So if we look at what this call pop-ups looks like, you see we've got a table here, right? So instead of making just a list of different things, I've got a table with different columns. Okay. So each one of these, everything in our brackets here, in our curly brackets, between these two curly brackets, is one of the rows in the table.
Okay.
Right. And what I'm also trying to do is I'm trying to make one of those columns. I think I know why. Let's call it image rather. Icon underscore icon info. Yeah, that's better. So it didn't like me calling it icon because I have something in the app already called icon, right? Our icon for our is called, our logo is called icon. Well, other way around. Let's try it like that. Do you prefer that? There we go. So I didn't like my name convention.
Here's a lesson for everyone that's going to watch our video at some point. And this is more of a humans of IT thing, okay? And that's why therapy works, people. So a therapist never solves problems. A therapist just listens, okay? So all I did is I let Rod just like talk it through with me, and then he figured it out on his own. So that's why it's important to chat to people.
Yeah, no, it really is. And but having somebody to bounce the stuff off of is very important. And there are a lot of forums and stuff online where you can do that, right?
Absolutely.
Which is very handy. So what we've done here is we've created this collection, right, which is a table. And because Power Apps is very clever, we can put different kinds of information in, right? Our title and our description are just text. But our image column is actually an image that we've put in, right? So we've got icon info and icon help. So we have two different pop-ups we're going to make, one with the title info and one with the title help. All right, this stuff is getting complicated. So now that we've got that, I want to display that when we have a pop-up, right? So we've got our background, and the way I'm going to display that is in a gallery. But before that, I want something in the middle here to put that gallery in. So I'm just going to have another label. We'll again take out the text. I'm going to make it white, so it'll show up nice and cleanly for us. And let's just make it a bit bigger, and we'll put it in the middle. See, if I move it around, it gives me guides to where the middle actually is. You can see those nice purple dots there. So there we are in the middle there. And I'm going to name that PU underscore foreground. So that's our background for this sorted. Next, I want to add a gallery that's actually going to display our pop-up information for us. Let's make it a bit smaller here. Lagging a little bit, and we'll put it here. We can extend that a little bit. Okay, so what are the items we want to put into this? Well, we want to put in our gallery. So it's we called it call pop-ups. There we go. When that decides to update for us. There we go. Okay, so we've got our call pop-ups here. And there's a couple things we want to do in this. We want to show our icon, we want to show our title, and we want to show our descriptive text. Sorry if you can hear my dog whuffing in the background there.
Love it. At least I had some pets in my house then tonight. That's nice.
So there's our icon. We'll put it at the top. And then I want to add a couple labels. One for the, sure, we'll do the description first. And we can make it bigger. Just like that. And then we want one more for our title, right? You could spend a lot of time getting this to look exactly how you want it to, right? So at the moment, we've got two different ones in here. That's not what we want. We actually only want one, but we'll get to that in a moment. Before we get there, we want to be able to close this pop-up. So I'm going to insert a icon, and we'll just use our close cancel icon here. And we can, whoop, no, see, I'm in the wrong thing. I'm in the gallery. I don't want to be in the gallery. I don't want to add it to the gallery. I want to add it to the page as a whole. All right, there. And we're going to use that in a moment. And when we click that, that's going to close our whole pop-up. Now, I don't want the pop-up to be showing all the time, right? I only want it to show it when I want it to. And the easiest way to do that is I'm going to select all of these different things, and I'm going to put them into a group. And we talked about groups earlier. So if I select all of them and I hit our three buttons, I can go down to group. I'm going to group them all together. You can then use that group to apply one of the attributes to everything in that group, right? The thing I'm interested in is the visible attribute. At the moment, it's just set to true, right? The visible attribute for all of those is set to true. I'm going to, for the moment, just set it to false. Okay, so then that hides it from us, and we're back to our normal app, as if we had done nothing. But when I push the information icon, I want that to pop up with just the information on the severity. So the icon, just like basically every control or label or anything has a property called onSelect. So onSelect does something when you select that control, right? Pretty self-explanatory. And what I'm going to use that for is I'm going to set another variable. So I'm going to set a variable just like we did for our footer. I'm going to call this variable var popup. And the value I'm going to set it to is info, right? I'm going to call it info because that is the title value in that collection we made. And I'm going to use that to tie into, to get our pop-up to display. So here, I'm just going to rename that group to pop-up. And then the visible here, I've got it set to false. And instead of false, I'm going to have this be a formula, right? So what I want it to be is when that var pop-up is populated with something that's in our gallery, then I want this to show. So I could do an if statement to do this. I can also just type an expression that can be either true or false, and we'll do that. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to say if var popup, which we've just made, right, is in collection dot title. When that, there we go. So what this is going to do is it's saying when the value of var popup is a value that is in the title column of our call popups table, right, which in our case is either info or help, then that's going to result as true, so it will be visible. I hope that makes sense. So if I then push this button, it's going to, this icon rather, it's going to then set that variable to info, which will match with what's in that category, and it should pop up for us. So that's how you can get something to pop up. And then if I click around, I can't interact with any of the controls in the back until this pop-up has disappeared. So two things left to do here. First of all, I don't want to show both of these. I don't want to show both of these entries. I only want to show the info entry, and I need some way to close this.
So you're going to like filter the gallery then based on the button that's been pushed?
Absolutely. So we'll go to our gallery, and in our items attribute, we can just filter call pop-ups, and we can do the same thing we did for the visible, right? So if filter where var pop-up, let's do it the other way around because it sort of makes more sense, right? In fact, it should be where this item dot, actually no, not this item, it's just title, right? I called it title, didn't I? Yeah, where the title is equal to var popup. And as soon as that updates, to pull in the variable properly, that will work. There we go. So it's just going to check. So it's only going to show us the one, which is really handy. And then that looks a lot.
But that's the nice thing about your variable. So see, now I'm starting to understand the table. So you kind of built it once, but you can then filter it. So instead of building it the whole time to then bring in the specific data, it's looking at the table, and then based on the property, it's then selecting the line that corresponds, and then only shows that pop-up, or only shows the detail in the pop-up. Got it.
And then the same thing for our close button here. All we're going to do is we're going to set our var pop-up and we can set it to anything really. I usually just set it to blank that. So if we then click this, it makes that variable blank, so it no longer matches, and then it disappears. I do that, and it pops up again.
How sweet is that?
Very cool. One nice little trick I like to do is on the background, right? The one we've got in the background here. I like to put the onSelect property of that to be the same as the close button.
Yeah, because
so
people sometimes just click it.
If people want to click just off of the pop-up, it will then also close, which is quite nice.
That's clever, because if you think, and I think that was a Mac OS first, okay? I didn't see that in Windows until like recently, the last couple of years. But if you take, for example, when you create a planner task, there's no save button anymore. You just click outside of the form. So that becomes like a norm for people to do. So that's a good fix.
Yeah. I would still put in a close button because people expect a close button. But that's a nice, just little quality of life.
I think so. Like it.
So what we've done here is sort of complicated, right? So we're using a gallery and all of this. You don't have to do that, right? You don't have to create the collection. You don't have to make the gallery. This little group we've done for our pop-up, you could do it just for that information pop-up. And then you could do it just
every time.
And then you could create another one for help and another one for the status and another one for the type. But then you land up with a whole bunch of controls here, and it gets a little more difficult to use. So this is a little bit, it's a little bit more effort to set up in the first place. But then once it's set up, it's really easy to add in new ones, right? All we have to do, so we know we want a help one. So let's add in a help one quickly. In fact, I'll just use a help icon rather than the image we put in. I'm pretty sure there's a help icon in here, just to show you that such things do exist.
It's a pity there's no search there.
Yes, it is. Okay, there isn't. You could create one with a circle and a question mark. We'll just use our image. I do now realize that I didn't make it white. So
that's okay.
We are going to have a... So our problem is on our background here, that's not going to be very good, but we'll just move it so that it's not there. Yeah, and again, next time we meet, I will do a similar thing where I will show you, and here's one I've created earlier, right? Because really I'd want that up in the top right-hand corner there, but we'll just do it there. And then here we can use the exact same thing we did here, except instead of changing it, the onSelect of this one, instead of changing it to pop up to info, we can change it to help. And then when we click that, it'll pop up our help, right?
Yes, that's clever.
And if we ever want to add a new one, instead of having to create all of these different controls again and make sure that they're above everything else, because one thing you'll actually notice here is if I do this, you can see that button. It's probably a bit difficult to see here, but it is above the black the background we have here. If I click that, it's not closing our, if I click here, it's not closing our pop-up because that control
above it
is a layer above that. So you want to make sure that you want to reorder them so that your pop-ups are at the very top. And you can see that's actually more grayed out now. And if I click there, it does put that in. So rather than having to deal with multiple layers of those, I find it much easier to just have one and then reuse it for that.
Makes sense.
And if we ever want to add in a new one, we can just come in here and add a new set of title, description, and image. inside curly brackets, and it will immediately be available to us.
And that's like a new line in your table that it references.
Yeah, and it's just a new line there in the table.
Cool.
Which is really good. These pop-ups also can be done for more than just this informational sorts of things, right? You could pop this up and they could have drop downs or text boxes for people to fill in information that you want to capture. They could have various buttons to do various things. To you might want to, if somebody wants to delete something, you might want to give them a pop-up to say, are you sure you want to delete it? And give them a yes or a no. And your no button just closes the pop-up, and the yes button actually does whatever it is you want to do to close that.
But that's something that you can use for compliance as well, like a disclaimer or something. So employee, you know, I don't know, like before they use a specific app, you can have a disclaimer and then say, yes, I accept the terms and conditions or whatever. I don't know.
Absolutely. So we're setting that we're setting this variable when you push the button, right? On the on select property. You could have
you can have it on load.
You could have it on load. Each screen has an on visible property.
Yeah.
Right. And that on visible property, you can say when you get to the screen, start with the pop-up enabled. So it starts with the pop-up that's saying, please note by checking this information, you're promising not to sell it to the Russians or whatever.
Got it.
And just enforce that sort of thing.
Okay.
I've used it in a couple apps where instead of using this gallery to do it, I'm actually looking up to a SharePoint list that has notes and information that another user can keep up to date, right?
And that was something I wanted to ask you earlier on about reusability on things like that, if we could point it to a SharePoint list. So that's definitely something we can maybe earmark for another one of our crazy sessions. So that would be interesting to see, because I like the idea of it being reusable.
Absolutely. The only tricky bit there is going to be your images. You can do it, but it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more difficult in that case.
Okay. Wowzer.
Yeah, that was quite a lot, I think, for the session. We've looked at the switch command.
Thankful that it's recorded.
And how to do that. We've looked at creating and using variables in a couple different ways. And we've put all of the things we've learned so far, right? How to make controls, how to group them together, how to set the different properties on them, how to make collections, and how to filter galleries. And we've put that all together into one effect. That is our pop-up here.
Pretty impressive. And we use switch as well, which is pretty.
Yeah, it is really good. So I think that will do for our portion of this week. And next week, I think what we're going to get into, we will start building out our forms for editing and viewing and creating new incidents. Oh, brilliant.
But I feel that this is something that I could achieve, so I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah. Once like in all things, right? Once you know how to do these, it's not that bad. Once you know how to do it. If you don't know how to do it, it's an uphill battle.
Difficult for anyone. And how nice for you to share your time with us. And you've spent thousands of hours making mistakes and figuring things out, and then you just go and show us how, and that's how easy it is. That's why community is important, and it's amazing.
Absolutely. And as you saw tonight, right, and last week, and every week we do this, I'm still making lots of mistakes. That is the secret to doing this.
And like we said, you can't succeed without failing. It's part of the process.
Yeah.
Cool.
So some resources for you guys. All of these are great places to find a bunch of information. Tracy's Twitter and my Twitter is also at the bottom there. YouTube,
Absolutely.
another absolutely fantastic place to do this. Lots of really awesome tutorials. And if you guys have tutorials that, or YouTube channels, Twitter accounts, Facebook groups that you think we should be showing, please do drop us a line. And we will gladly check them out and show all of you what that is. And if you are looking for icons to put into your apps, freeicons.io is really good. They have a ton. They really have a ton of different icons. Probably anything you'd want to use in your business, they have one for, and you can use them, which is really cool.
That's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing that, right? And I'm like, man, it's amazing how fast the time goes, hey? It's just amazing how fast this hour goes. And but such cool things I saw tonight. Good grief. And the nice thing for me is that I know that there's the ability that I can go and sit down with that recording and try it out, and I'll be able to do it. And that's pretty cool. I really like that idea.
Follow along. Once you've done that once or twice, it really does become second nature to sort of put those sorts of things together. And getting comfortable with the formulas and using collections and variables is very useful, right? That'll really take it to the next level. Next week, we're gonna step it back a little bit, and we'll get more into the sort of first look mode, and we'll create our view edit screen, and we'll start getting that stuff running.
I'm very, very excited for it, Rod. As always, thank you very much for your time and for everyone joining us. And absolutely, I hope that you're enjoying the learning journey as much as I am. And yeah, from my side, everyone must have an amazing week. And you as well, Roddy. We'll catch up again in 7 days.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks, Rod.
Cheers, everyone.
Have a good week.
Ciao.